He existed in Kennel 9, not as a dog, but as a void. A small, tan terrier mix named Finn, according to the paperwork. But the name felt like a placeholder for a personality that had been systematically erased. Finn wasn't just scared or shy. His very essence, his spirit, felt fundamentally crushed. He spent nearly all his time curled into the tightest possible ball in the furthest corner of his run, often facing the cold concrete wall, presenting a barricade of withdrawn fur to the outside world. He moved only when absolutely necessary, a slow, stiff unfolding to relieve himself, or a barely perceptible shift in position. He rarely made eye contact, and when he did, his gaze was distant, unfocused, as if looking through people rather than at them. There was no spark, no curiosity, no flicker of hope in those dull brown eyes. It was the look of a creature who had endured horrors that had hollowed him out from the inside, leaving only a shell behind. Finn had been rescued months earlier from a large-scale hoarding situation. The details were grim. Dozens of animals living in squalor, filth, and darkness, deprived of proper nutrition, veterinary care, socialization, and any semblance of normal canine life. They fought for scraps, hid from unpredictable human interactions, and learned that survival meant becoming invisible, shutting down emotionally to cope with the constant stress and deprivation. Finn arrived at the rescue severely underweight, with a dull, patchy coat, internal parasites, and a profound, debilitating fear of everything. Sudden movements, loud noises, human hands, open spaces, even gentle voices. While his physical condition slowly improved with proper care, his spirit remained stubbornly, heartbreakingly crushed. The deepest wounds he carried weren't the physical ones, which were healing, but the invisible scars etched onto his psyche. In the bustling environment of the rescue center, Finn was an anomaly of stillness. While other dogs barked for attention, played with toys, or eagerly greeted volunteers, Finn remained a statue of resignation. Well-meaning volunteers tried all the usual tricks, offering high-value treats, tossing soft toys gently into his run, sitting quietly outside his kennel. Standard behavior assessments were impossible. He couldn't be leashed without panicking. He couldn't be handled without triggering a complete shutdown or frantic, fearful attempts to escape. He seemed utterly unreachable, lost in a prison of his own trauma. Experienced staff members sighed, exchanging worried glances. Dogs, like Finn, required immense resources, time, patience, specialized handling that were often in short supply. While the rescue was committed to rehabilitation, Finn showed virtually no progress week after week, month after month. He seemed frozen in his fear, his spirit showing no signs of mending. The quiet fear began to circulate. Was he too damaged? Were his psychological wounds simply too deep to ever heal? Was he destined to live out his life in the protective but limited environment of the rescue, never knowing the comfort and security of a real home? That's when Maya heard about him. Maya wasn't a typical adopter. She was a quiet woman who worked from home as a writer and had a reputation within the local rescue community for her almost saintly patience and intuitive understanding of severely traumatized animals. She had previously fostered and successfully rehabilitated several dogs deemed hopeless. She believed fervently in the transformative power of love, applied not as grand gestures, but as a steady, gentle, unwavering presence. Intrigued and saddened by Finn's story, she arranged to visit the rescue. Seeing Finn curled in his corner, radiating an aura of profound despair, Maya felt an immediate, deep connection. She didn't see a lost cause. She saw a soul desperately crying out for safety and understanding, even if that cry was utterly silent. She sat down on the floor outside his kennel, a good distance away, turned slightly sideways, and simply sat there in silence for nearly an hour, breathing calmly, projecting peace. Finn didn't uncurl, didn't look at her, gave no indication he even knew she was there. But Maya wasn't deterred. She saw the subtle tension in his body, the shallow breathing, the way his ears remained rigidly oriented towards the kennel door despite his posture. He was aware. He was just too terrified to show it. After several visits spent just sitting quietly outside his run, Maya made a decision. She spoke to the rescue director. "I'd like to foster him," she stated calmly. "I know it will be a long road, possibly forever. But I think he deserves a chance in a quiet home environment, away from the stress here. I believe I can help him." Given Maya's track record and Finn's lack of progress at the shelter, the director agreed, relieved, but also realistic about the immense challenge Maya was undertaking. Transporting Finn to Maya's quiet, small house was incredibly stressful for him, requiring careful handling and resulting in him bolting into the secure, designated safe room Maya had prepared. A quiet spare room with soft bedding, a covered crate acting as a den, water, and minimal furniture. He wedged himself behind the crate and refused to emerge for the rest of the day and night. Maya understood this was not about fixing Finn quickly. It was about creating an environment of absolute safety and predictability, allowing him to perhaps, eventually, choose to engage with the world again on his own terms. Her approach mirrored her initial visits: patience, consistency, and zero pressure, amplified by the power of love manifesting as unwavering commitment. For the first week, she barely entered his safe room, only slipping in quietly to replace his water and leave food near the crate entrance while he was hidden, then immediately leaving. She spent hours working on her laptop just outside the closed door, letting him gradually acclimate to her nearby presence and the quiet rhythm of her home. Progress was measured in minuscule shifts, often invisible to anyone but Maya. After 10 days, Finn started eating the food while Maya was still in the hallway outside the room, rather than waiting until she was further away. A few days later, he poked his nose out from behind the crate to watch her leave after placing his food bowl down. Maya began spending short periods sitting quietly just inside the doorway of the room, reading aloud in her usual calm monotone, never looking directly at him, never trying to approach. Finn would remain frozen behind his crate, but he was observing her. The first time he fully emerged from behind the crate, while Maya was in the room, felt like a seismic event. He stood rigidly near the wall, tense and watchful, for several minutes before retreating back to his hiding spot. Maya simply continued reading, acknowledging his bravery with her own continued calm. This pattern repeated for weeks. Emerge briefly, observe, retreat. Maya started leaving special, high-value treats scattered in the room, away from his crate, for him to find when he felt safe enough to explore, usually after she left. Slowly, he began taking them. Then, she started placing a treat slightly closer to where she sat. It took many days before he dared to snatch one while she was still present, immediately retreating. Maya never tried to touch him, never coaxed him closer, never pushed. She let Finn dictate the pace entirely. The deepest wounds from his past made him incredibly sensitive to perceived threats. A dropped book, a doorbell ringing unexpectedly, even Maya sneezing once. These minor events could send him scrambling back behind his crate, sometimes undoing days of tentative progress. Each time, Maya responded not with frustration, but with quiet understanding, sometimes retreating back a step in her approach, always reinforcing safety and predictability. Her unwavering patience was the bedrock of his potential healing. Months passed. Finn gradually became more comfortable with Maya's quiet presence in his safe room. He started spending more time lying on the soft bedding outside the crate, though still usually near a wall. He began occasionally taking treats gently from her outstretched hand, a process that took weeks of him snatching them near her hand first. Each accepted treat felt like a miracle. He started tolerating her quiet movements around the room more readily. Maya noticed other subtle signs that his spirit, though still fragile, was no longer entirely crushed. Sometimes, while she read, his body would relax, almost imperceptibly, a slight softening around his eyes, a gentle sigh that didn't sound entirely stress-related. Once, while looking out the window, he saw a bird land nearby, and his ear twitched with genuine, fleeting curiosity, not just hypervigilance. The concept of love for a dog like Finn wasn't about cuddles or enthusiastic greetings. It was about providing unwavering security, respecting his profound need for space and choice, and celebrating the tiniest flickers of engagement. It was about understanding that healing from such deep wounds happens on the dog's timeline, not the human's. Maya's love was expressed in her steadfastness, her quiet encouragement, her refusal to give up on him even when progress stalled or reversed. A major turning point came nearly 8 months after Finn arrived at Maya's home. She was sitting on the floor, reading as usual. Finn, who had become comfortable lying on his bed a few feet away, unexpectedly stood up, stretched slowly, and walked hesitantly towards her. He stopped just out of arm's reach, looked at her hand resting on her knee, then, briefly, incredibly, met her eyes for a split second before looking away. Then, he gently nudged her hand with his nose before turning and walking back to his bed. Maya felt her breath catch. It was the most profound, voluntary interaction he had ever initiated. It was a clear signal. I am beginning to trust you. I am choosing connection over fear. From that day forward, while progress remained slow, it felt more directional. Finn started spending brief periods exploring the quiet hallway outside his safe room, always with the door open so he could retreat instantly. He allowed Maya to gently stroke his back for a few seconds while he ate. He began showing faint interest in a very soft, silent plush toy Maya left near his bed, occasionally sniffing it or nudging it. One evening, while Maya watched television quietly on the sofa in the living room, Finn walked slowly into the room, hesitated, then lay down on the rug several feet away from the sofa. He didn't stay long, retreating back to his safe room after about 10 minutes. But the fact that he had voluntarily chosen to be in the main living space with her felt revolutionary. Maya knew Finn might never be the carefree, outgoing dog he might have been without his traumatic past. His deepest wounds had irrevocably shaped him. He would likely always be sensitive, wary of strangers, and easily overwhelmed by noise and chaos. But witnessing his gradual transformation from a completely crushed spirit, unable to engage with the world, to a dog capable of tentative trust, quiet exploration, and moments of voluntary connection, was profound. It was a living demonstration of the incredible power of love, patient, quiet, undemanding love, to heal. Finn's tail offered its first wag almost a full year after he came to Maya. It wasn't a big, sweeping motion, just a slight, hesitant flicker of the tip when Maya returned from taking out the trash. But that tiny movement spoke volumes. It signaled the emergence of something new, or perhaps something long buried, a flicker of positive anticipation, a nascent feeling of security, maybe even the first stirrings of affection. Looking at Finn now, resting calmly on his bed, accepting gentle scratches, occasionally following Maya from room to room at a distance, his eyes softer, his body less tense. Maya knew the journey was far from over, but the void was starting to fill. His spirit, once utterly crushed, was slowly, painstakingly being mended. He was learning to exist not just in safety, but perhaps, eventually, in peace. His story stood as a powerful, moving testament. Even when faced with the deepest wounds imaginable, the persistent, gentle, unwavering power of love holds an incredible capacity to heal, nurture resilience, and coax even the most broken spirits back towards the light.